Opinions, viewpoints, and beliefs presented on this program do not necessarily reflect those of the management, the affiliates and broadcast partners, or the sponsors. Listener discretion is advised.
Scarefest Radio, the radio you can see.
And hello and good evening, everyone, and welcome to Scarefest TV. And something's already jacked up on my console because my theme music actually, instead of playing through my nice little headphones, actually played through one of my speakers. So I have no idea, but apparently it did go out to the public, and the board's all green. So welcome once again. The original broadcast date, November 18th, 2022. Returning for her triumphant return, Katie Followell is my co-host tonight. The lovely and talented Katie Followell, who I want to point out, give you kudos. You were absolutely next to Chad Harlan, you were the best worker I had. You stood there all weekend doing what exactly what I told you to do.
To stand there and take pictures. I'm really good at that.
Well, I mean, you did it.
I had a blast. I was like, please let me do this again next year.
Well, you will. In some capacity, that it will be exactly what your job is. Now, on to our guest.
How's everybody doing out there?
Now, I do want to, for his, rather, I'm sure the presentation was great, but this is the way he sold it to us. So anyway, the difference between psychopathy and sociopathy, I had more trouble with that. The categories of serial killers influence as well as his own background and personal experience, that's scary just to even put that in there. He typically uses a PowerPoint presentation, so that way, as well as a handout, but that was just give us a heads up, it'll need the screen. Everybody, okay, Jeff, by the way, I didn't, you can leave him up, but everybody, you notice, I tried to dress serial killery tonight. I decided to do that. And that...
No Hawaiian shirt?
I got a buttload of flannel in my closet, and it doesn't get any playtime. So...
You have a little Dexter thing going on right now. It's good.
I did the hair and... So,
I thought you were doing like a Taylor Swift thing. Like thing.
Yeah, I'm such a big fan. I couldn't name you 3 songs I wouldn't say. Yeah.
I got to tell you, as the way those tickets are going, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to kill each other.
Yes.
Oh, and before we go on with the show, everybody, prayers and thoughts go out to Adrian of the Scarefest. You know who she is if you've been around at all. She had a loss in her family this week, and so we do want her to know that we are thinking about her. Now, well, Jeff, let's just go ahead and get right into it. What does make people want to wear other people's skins for clothing?
I think it's a lot of different things. Obviously there is a screw loose somewhere, and some really, really strange things happen to you, typically as a child, and kind of cross those wires. And for whatever reason, you decided that that is something that you desire to have as part of your life. So you see that with all kinds of people, like Ed Gein, for example. He's probably the one that is the most renowned for that, making a woman's suit and everything,
and the nipple belt. I love the nipple belt.
Yeah. So he had a really weird relationship with his mom, and so all of the loss, probably being low functioning to begin with, kind of created that perfect storm.
So it's nurture and not nature. Okay, show's over. We're done.
Yeah.
If only it were that simple.
Now, the other part of the equation is, Now, okay. Now, my own fascination with it on Netflix. Incidentally, by the way, has anybody noticed that Netflix has all these great documentaries and Hulu has absolute shit? It's like How to Make a Strawberry Cake. It's horrible. But on Netflix, now I do get, now at one time I was getting so into true crime and all this that my wife literally one night walked in and said, "Will you watch something else? This is so depressing." And although most of mine were about spree killers, for the record, which I know the difference. But what is, well, here, Katie's hosting tonight, so I'll frame it this way. Why do bitches love serial killers?
Good question.
Go ahead.
Well, okay, now I'll even frame that a little better for you. When I told her you were coming on, she said, "Oh, I've been reading a book about it." I'm like, "Who reads a book about this shit?" Anyway, there is a fascination. It's one thing when it's in the news, but these true crime podcasts and like I said, the Netflix what draws us to that? Do you think?
I think people are just fascinated with understanding the things that they don't experience. Or maybe they do experience it. Maybe they do have those thoughts and they want to understand why someone would choose to follow through with those and then go and kill a bunch of people. You know, just like for my card game, you know, a large percentage of the people that buy it are middle-aged women. A lot of that has to do with the fact that they're all at home watching true crime documentaries and listen to podcasts all day long. So it really is that I think often housewives have the time, they have the bandwidth, and that's their husbands are pissing them off all the time.
Now, see, I understand targeted killing. I understand spree killing. I mean, 1 week before Scarefest every year. It's that close, people. It's that close. I mean, it just, I'm one disagreement or one stupid question in the chat room, or not chat room, in the Scarefest messages away from this, calling it a day and just, you know, but once again, targeted. I guess, let's ask it that way. And I know the answer because I watched Netflix documentaries, but they're not but they do, serial killers over it, by and large, do tend to pick a certain type of victim. Is that pretty much the right cliche to put on that?
Correct. Most of them do. Some of them, and there's only been 1 or 2 documented, that will change, and they'll change their target audience, I guess. I can't think of the word for it. Their victim type. So there are only a few that do that. But what you're really asking is that difference between spree killers and serial killers. And there is a few big differences, right? We all have the capability to kill. Like I do, you do. If the right influences happen, we kill a whole bunch of people. You know, if my income stopped tomorrow and I couldn't pay for my food and I couldn't take care of my car and I couldn't pay my mortgage, I'd go out there and I'd find a way to get that money. And if somebody got in the way, they might not be here, right? So we all have that capability, which is what happens typically when spree killers kill. Right. They kill a group of people, they kill a population because they have some kind of gripe against them. Serial killers are not the same. They don't kill for the same reasons. Typically, it's a sexual reason, right? So they're killing to satisfy some kind of sexual need that they have, however perverted that has become in their life. Jerry Brudos is a good example. He was a shoe fetish killer, and he had a thing about women's feet and high heels. And he would kill women, and he would cut off their feet, put them in his freezer. When they got into his house, he was married, had children. So when they got into his house,
and the wife never.
That's very Al Bundy.
Exactly, very much. So, you know, depending on what that sexual need is, typically, or it could be some other kind of psychological issue too. Maybe they want to kill because they believe that God is telling them to do it. That's a different type of killer. Someone that is not organized at all and comes unhinged very easily. So very different types of killers, which is why I talked about the different types in the talk.
Over to Katie.
Okay, I've got a dumb question. So one of the things that I was reading up on is I read a lot about school shooters. Is that a spree killer or is that a serial killer?
Much more of a spree killing.
Okay.
It wouldn't even be classified as a serial killer, mainly because when they do it, most of them know that they're going to get caught, right? Which is why they often kill themselves, or they, do suicide by police, right? They know that when they go in and they shoot a bunch of people, that they're not going to get away with it. So they are trying to take as many people with them as they can. The Columbine shooters are a good example of that. They went there to blow up the school. They shot a bunch of kids, and it was a terrible, terrible thing. But their ultimate goal was to kill everybody in that school. And if they would have been successful, they would have had hundreds of people that would have died in that. And that is classic spree killing.
I didn't know that term until tonight, so that's interesting. One of the things, okay, my first good serial killer read was Helter Skelter. It's classic. And one thing I couldn't decide when reading about Charles Manson is do you believe that he actually believed the things he was preaching, or was it just a ploy to see how much he could manipulate people? Did he, you know what I mean?
Okay. My dad met Manson in the early 60s before the killings. So that is part of what got me involved in all of this. So when I think about that, I understand that Manson had a lot of control over the people that were around him. He did that in a variety of ways. One of them was keeping them all drugged up on LSD, which certainly helped. And then the other one was really taking them away from everything that they knew. He took them away from their families, their friends. They became the family. So I don't know that he believed all the shit that he said. I know that he enjoyed having that power over people. And he thought that he could continue doing that when he was in prison. And he was successful with some people that came to him and would talk to him and would commit crimes outside of, jail just because Manson told him to. So, he still had a lot of control over people. The sad thing is I've also met a bunch of homeless people that do the same thing, right?
Yeah.
They get a whole bunch of people around them. They act real crazy. They talk all kinds of crazy shit, and people will follow them and sit and talk to them.
Like, one of the things that I really struggled with, especially reading Helter Skelter, is what do you do with these people? I mean, they caught Manson, and I couldn't decide. Like, it was something I kind of had to have an inner dialogue about. I know he was originally sentenced to death, and then the California law changed, and then they switched him to life in prison. And I just thought, I was like, he couldn't have been rehabilitated to be a better person. That's just who he was. Like, what do you do with these people? Like, I don't know.
With Manson, and like a lot of them, especially the criminal ones, right? Because you have two separate sets there. Some of them that are criminally minded, and Manson was one. He committed lots and lots of petty crimes throughout his life, was in jail a ton. It wasn't just for the Tate LaBianca murders. He went to jail for stealing cars and robbing people, all kinds of stuff.
He was a pimp too, I think, or something like that.
So, when it's somebody like that, you have to remember that if you catch it early enough, there is always room for change with people that have some kind of intelligence. And maybe I shouldn't say it that way. that aren't like don't have
Like,
mental illness, right? Or
yeah.
that are not severely mentally ill. If you're severely mentally ill, there's not a whole lot that can be done. Richard Chase, that guy was super schizophrenic, was in and out of the hospitals for years and years. They kept letting him out. And eventually he was going to kill somebody because he was just so far out of his mind. He didn't even know what reality was. So, but with someone else that is attached to reality, there is some rehabilitation that can happen. There are influences that can get in there. Now, the problem is that often that doesn't happen. Often we overlook it for so long that nothing can be done. And by the time they really start killing, and especially, now we're talking about serial killers, but once they get that taste and they get that desire, and that is what they believe they want is being fulfilled, they'll never stop, right? Because there's nothing else that compares to that. So then you really do run into the risk of, well, what do you do with those people? There has to be a place to house them. You got to throw them in jail and throw away the key or execute them. Because by that time, like Ted Bundy was never going to stop killing. Richard Ramirez was never going to stop killing. Those guys were going to do it until their last breath because it's what motivated them. It's what drove them. It's what gave them the most pleasure. And you just can't shut that off. It's just like, LeBron James playing basketball, right? Like he's never going to stop. Even when he's like 70 years old, he's going to be playing a pickup game with some kids on the corner because that's just what he does, right?
That's a good way to look at it. This is something I genuinely don't know. Do we really still have serial killers in today's culture?
Absolutely. They are all over the place. There is a big difference in today's culture than, in the 70s, 80s, 90s, the kind of the golden age of serial killing. Now, everybody has a camera. Everybody is getting pinged every place that they go. Our phones track everything that we're doing. So it is next to impossible to get away with some of the things that like Ted Bundy got away with, right? When there wasn't a cell phone that he was holding on to, where there weren't cameras at every gas station. So, now if you go into Walmart and you buy some duct tape and some rope and a shovel, somebody is looking at you wondering what the fuck you're doing if you're not building something in your backyard. So, and maybe they're even looking if you're doing that. But they can go back and find all that shit out. They can find out the minute and the second you're in a store buying it, right? So, like, it's not that serial killers are gone. It's just that we catch them so fast. They never have time to kill more than one or two people before we catch them. And with that being said, just 3 weeks ago, there were 2 serial killers caught in California and 1 caught in Indiana. So, and that's just in the last month. Who knows how many are actually out there right now? They surmise, you hear reports 300, 500, nobody really knows.
Okay,
I think the other.
Go ahead, Jeff.
The other big thing with that is that in the 70s and the 80s, none of the police organizations worked together, right? We didn't have an international database of crimes that they could look at all across the country. So somebody would commit a crime in one county and move over 2 counties, do the same exact crime, and nobody would ever put the 2 together. Now, everybody works together, so they find that shit out, within a couple weeks, versus then it took them years. Sometimes never would they know unless somebody was, at the donut shop and they were all talking about, man, we got this one case where this guy axe murdered this lady and we don't know who it is. Oh shit, that happened in my county too. You know, that's how it used to happen. That's not how it happens anymore.
Okay, let's do our first commercial break. Pay some bills around here. Okay, everybody, listen to me forever, and I've had the commercial on BlueLeafNaturals.com. Check out their website. First of all, on the Blue Relief lotion that I've been bragging about, it's on sale like half price right now. So check that out. But you're talking, this is USDA certified organically grown hemp. Locally sourced, locally processed, right here in Kentucky. It's owned by Kentucky people. And Kentucky's finest. I can just go on and on. It's a whole list of Kentucky things. The point is, this stuff actually works. I use it darn near every day on what has become now known as my bad knee. But thank you, Scarefest, Sunday night. Anyway, the point is, check them out. BlueLeafNaturals.com. Try it out. You will not be sorry that you did. Okay, back to the show now. First of all, our first theme of the evening. Ladies, check your freezers. Check your freezers. And Meredith in the chat room, by the way, the answer is, yeah, that's kind of weird. So I'll leave that for the chat room people. Somebody in the chat room, I did want to get to some of the questions coming out of there. Now, I don't even remember this name. I'm sure he was on one of my documentaries that I watched. Samuel Little. Samuel Little. What are your thoughts? That's where they ask it. What are your thoughts on Samuel Little?
So Samuel Little is a fascinating case, you know, and oddly enough, I have some background information on that because I have a friend of mine who, you know, Samuel Little was caught here in the Cincinnati area where I am currently at. He went around the country for many, many years, was in jail several times. They never once even fingered him for any of the murders. But in total, he confessed to 93 murders. And I think he was convicted of something like 76 or something. So he is probably the most prolific American serial killer. And very, very few people know who he even is. He was also known as the choke and stroke killer because he would typically choke the prostitutes that he would kill, and then he would stroke himself, and that was his sexual release. So old Samuel Little, he would also draw pictures. That's how the cops realized and started putting together all of the bodies that were all over the country that he was killing. But I have a friend of mine who believed that Samuel Little killed her cousin, I believe it was. And so they were looking into the case files, and she actually worked with the FBI for them to find a body that Samuel Little had buried here in the Cincinnati area. And as far as I know, they just found it like a couple months ago in a retaining wall at the Beverly Hills Supper Club, where that used to be. So, yeah, Samuel Little, crazy, crazy guy.
And let's face it, burying a body in Cincinnati, no one's even going to bother to look. Okay, now.
How do you know that, Wes?
Because I've been through Cincinnati, okay?
Amen.
You feel dirty when you drive through Cincinnati. Now, it's a wonderful bunch of people.
Saying?
But
I shower plenty.
There's just some maybe it's because it's been there so long. Maybe it's because the German influence and everybody's drinking beer all the time. I don't know. When I drive through Cincinnati, I just don't enjoy it. I grew up in northern Kentucky, so I mean we were a suburb of Cincinnati. So I'm not being whatever the word is when you pick on somebody else. No, I was one of them. It still bugs me that I didn't know who that was. And he's just right up the road from me. Let's see. What are some of the questions in the chat room other than talking about my knee? I did want to, okay, let's go back to your presentation. Now, first of all, the fact that you used these words through my college-educated guest or co-host that I had that night that we announced you. But, okay, the difference between psychopathy and sociopathy. Sociopathy. I believe I'm saying both of those words correctly.
You are now. Good job. It took a little bit of work, but it's good.
Actually, I do pretty good if you only throw one at a time at me. But the two of them in one sentence was just way too much for this country boy's brain.
So the reason why we talk about those two specifically is just because everybody uses them interchangeably. They are different. And I think the big thing that I try to get people to understand is that being a psychopath or being a sociopath is not a clinical diagnosis, right? Those are descriptors of antisocial personality behavior disorders, right? So there is nobody that's out there that is has psychopathic disorder. Basically, what it means is a psychopath doesn't have any conscience or empathy. And that is different from a sociopath because a sociopath can actually have empathy and they can mask it. So sociopaths typically can fit into society, and they're the ones that maybe every single politician on the planet, right? Psychopaths typically can't integrate into society. They are unable to understand how other people feel. They're unable to understand how other people react to things. So they have a hard time really developing relationships with other people. So that really is the main difference between the two. Now, the truth is there's plenty of sociopaths and psychopaths that never killed anybody. Most of them are really fucking good at business, me included. So, Bill Gates, probably a sociopath or a psychopath. That guy doesn't do a really good job of integrating with people. He has enough money now that he can do whatever the fuck he wants.
But he makes us integrate, by God.
Elon Musk, probably a sociopath.
Yes. Yeah. But, that's okay. Those guys are solely focused. They can really dig into something and they can make it and they can create all of these things. Incredible people. However, if you should decide to start killing, also probably a sociopath or a psychopath, one of the two.
Okay, let's go ahead. We're going to do our second commercial break, and then I got one more question, then I'm going to toss it over to you, Katie. So, there we go. Spirit Mechanics, long-time supporter of the show. I am a Spirit Mechanics by definition. I feel like we are Negan. Anyway, no, Spirit Mechanics. Great bunch of guys. Curse a little more than some people want when they do seminars and stuff, but that's fine. Point of it is, they've opened a store. They've moved in with Jeweled Phoenix, excuse me, on Newtown Pike. Newtown Pike in Lexington. Easy to get to. It's like 2 lights down from the Clarion Hotel, which just about everybody of Scarefest fame now knows where that is. But the address is on their website. It is 1510 Newtown Pike. They have, in their moving to brick and mortar, they've added a bunch of really cool stuff. Tarot cards, different mystical stones and jewelry. In other words, the stuff that you all go shopping for all the time, they got it now. They got it in a brick and mortar. You don't have to wait for the monthly mystical market, which I'll be talking about in a moment. But you can go in during their hours. There's usually one of them there to talk to, or more than one of them. But you can go in, you can get the stuff you're looking for. These guys are really good. They're basically energy workers. They call themselves alchemists, but they've got specialties, including alchemy, shamanism, Celtic witchcraft, angelic magic, astral travel, all this stuff that they dabble in, that they've researched, that they've been taught in. And they're just a good bunch of guys. And if you have any type of, we'll call it metaphysical ghost problem, or if you think sometimes the energy just gets to you, I've been there. Check these guys out, spiritmechanics.com. And of course, if you can't see it on the screen, that is spelled with an X. I do want to tell you, everybody, the Central Kentucky Mystical Market is coming up December 10th and 11th. The year is getting away from us. It's like 2 weeks away. 2 weeks. Going on through. I don't know. I didn't do the math, actually. The point is,
it's right around the corner.
It's right around the corner. The Central Kentucky Mystical Market, located at 1510 Newtown Pike, 2 lights the other direction from Spirit Mechanics, and Clarion Hotel. Clarion Hotel. Details will be posted on that about it on Facebook. Go to their Facebook group in page for more information. Just look it up. And we're back with Jeff Ignatowski. I did want to ask one question. It kind of came up in the chat room, so I'm just going to word it out this way. How would you recognize if someone in your circle, your family, your friends, was showing signs of this, of being a potential, if you find the bodies, I get the feet in the freezer, I get it. But if you, without being overly suspicious, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for?
Accusatory?
Yeah, accusatory. Very good, Katie, very good.
Thanks. That's why I'm here.
First of all, what should a person look for? And what should a person do if they're just suspicious?
So, first off, I often don't think that you would know.
I agree.
Right? Those people that are doing those things are often very, very good at manipulation. They're very good at hiding things. So I always tell people that if that's the case, you always trust your gut, because your gut is going to tell you so much more than you are going to be able to pick up, even if you're trying to figure it out, right? It's the classic thing that everybody says after they catch a serial killer is, holy shit, I lived right next door to that guy, and I never knew anything was going on.
He was good with kids. That's Ed Gein.
Gacy, nobody had any idea that he had, 29 bodies under his house. The guy played Pogo the Clown, right? Going around doing birthday parties for kids. Very, very few people had any idea of what he was doing before he ended up getting caught and before the things that brought him down happened. So it's really difficult because people display all kinds of behaviors. So again, trust your gut. If somebody's giving you the uh-oh feeling, believe that shit, right? Make sure you are taking allowances to not be in that kind of vicinity and allowing yourself to become a victim. The other thing is just pay attention, right? Understand that there are lots of weird fucking people out there. Again, myself included. And
we had a whole convention about that just like a month ago. So go ahead.
Yeah. What I find is that most people that are really into true crime and horror are so far away from that because we are typically indulging in the things that satisfy that dark side, right? We're not trying to hide it. We're not trying to suppress it. It's the people that often throughout their lives are suppressing all of those things that it has to come out in some kind of physical manifestation. So if you're fantasizing about the roadkill that's on the side of the road, and maybe if you sit there and watch Terrifier 2, you might not have quite a problem and want to cut people open and see what they look like on the inside.
Beautiful words. Beautiful words.
Uh, who's your favorite serial killer? We all have one.
The one that I find most fascinating is probably H.H. Holmes. Uh, I have a huge thing for, P.T. Barnum and that whole like turn of the century kind of the way that everybody lived back then. I think is fascinating. I think it's fascinating the fact that, he was swindling everybody out of all kinds of shit, that, he would get people to work on the hotel and then he would like fire them after they built like 2 rooms. So nobody knew what the hell was going on in there. I think that is all fascinating.
Is that The Devil in the White City? Is that the book about H.H. Holmes? I have that. I need to read that. Who's the most overrated serial killer in your opinion?
Oh God. I think some people will never forgive me for saying this. EJ, if you're listening, I apologize, but I think the most overrated one is probably Bundy.
I agree.
I think it is a fascinating story. I think that he is like the poster boy for some of this stuff. But I don't think that he is the be all end all.
I'm with you. I read Ann Rule's book about him and was kind of like, eh. And then there was one book that was called like My Friend Ted Bundy or something. I don't know. There was something else I read. Oh no, it was somebody who was doing a relationship with him. And I was like, he just sounds like an asshole. Like there's nothing mysterious about it. He's just a dick. I'm right there with you. If somebody was interested in learning more about serial killers, what do you think they should do? Watch documentaries, read books? Is anything you recommend?
I mean, there is no shortage of material right now. So like they could literally go anywhere. And of course,
except Hulu.
Shameless.
Except Hulu.
And Disney Plus.
Yeah. Disney Plus has some they have a few interesting things. Not much, but anyway, dig around on Disney Plus. But there's a lot of, they could go to all kinds of different places. YouTube has some great stuff. There are some incredible podcasts out there. If you are really into Gacy specifically, there's a friend of mine that does the Defense Diaries podcast. Bob Mata, his dad was Gacy's defense attorney. And that first season of his podcast is absolutely incredible. And you will learn so many things that you didn't know about that case listening to him. It's fascinating. If you haven't listened to it, check it out. And then, of course, shameless plug for myself. If you like to play games, then playing Killers the Card Game is a great way to learn.
I was actually sitting here about to say, because I was like, I might get my father-in-law your game for Christmas. What is your card game like similar to? Like would Magic the Gathering people like it, or?
So it's a cross between D&D and Magic. So
Ooh.
It is very RPG-esque. And I did that on purpose because I wanted people to be able to really get behind the psychology and understand some of these different killers. So it is really about awareness and the fact that currently I have over 300 killers in the game, and you can really use it as kind of like a compendium of killers. So, using that and really understanding who they are and what they did. The game is a lot of fun. And then it has the magic elements where you can really fuck over the other players that are playing with you, which is half the fun.
Yeah. I know your booth always looked pretty active at Scarefest. I would walk by and panic and would see you out of the corner of my eye. But what made you get interested in serial killers, and is there anything in particular that piqued your interest?
So like I mentioned, I grew up with a lot of stories. I kind of come into it honestly. Half of my family is all Italian. They were all fronts for the mob in the early 70s. So, I grew up around true crime all my life. I also grew up with a lot of abuse, a lot of uh, a lot of the same thoughts and a lot of the same issues that some of those killers faced. So, like, it was always something that was very close to me personally. So I, just was always fascinated with understanding why one person chooses to go kill a bunch of people and why I chose not to do that. Because I started out with a lot of the same influences. Like, for example, I talk a lot about the McDonald triad. So the McDonald triad is what they used to believe was kind of like the gold standard for serial killers, right? Late bedwetting, abusive animals, and fire starting were the triad. I fit all three of those things. Well, of course, now what we find is that is a great indicator of violent behavior, not necessarily an indicator of a serial killer. Because, like, for example, BTK loved animals, right? He never abused animals, but he still killed a whole bunch of people. So not everybody fits that triad that has killed other people. So anyway, because I grew up with all of that stuff, because I had all those influences, it was just kind of a natural fit for me to be interested in this stuff and to try to have a little bit more self-discovery and understand who I am and like what it is that makes me up as a person.
I think like what made me even get into it was I have horrible anxiety disorder, and especially in this area in the South and in my family, we didn't talk about these things that are scary. So once I read about them, it kind of gave me a sense of control and understanding. It's very interesting. Um, I had a question, but I don't remember what it was now.
I do that all the time.
I had a birthday pretty recently. I've more forgetful at age 29.
Well, I'll tell you what, Katie, let's do our third commercial break and get our movie review in. And when we come back, we'll go to all of us. And then if you think of your question, you have plenty of time to get it in. Everybody, we'll be right back with more Scarefest TV.
Horror. Movie. Fans. 4. Life. On Facebook. Find us. 4 watch parties. 4 news. 4 memes. 4 friends. 4 life. Horror movie fans for life. Join us.
Hey, Scarefest fans. This is Joe Lewis of Bonehead Weekly. I think I'm getting old. I'm getting old, or I just don't care for gore's sake. I'm not for sure. If it's funny, then yeah. But I just don't know that I care for gore just for gore's sake. That being said, let's review Terrifier 2. I've actually had the privilege, because of Scarefest, to be able to interview David Thornton Howard, who plays Art the Clown. He was at Scarefest before COVID, did his panel, and then Catherine Corcoran, and she has the infamous death scene with the first Terrifier. So Terrifier was okay. It had the common decency to be 80 minutes, and I really am always impressed by that movie only costing $30,000. So with Terrifier 2 only costing $250,000, crowdfunded, I will have to say it's all on the screen. Is it still low budget? Yes, but the effects, the gore, it's all on the screen. It's almost 2 hours and 20 minutes long. There's no reason, unless you're The Exorcist, that you should ever be 2 hours or more for a horror film. There's no 2 hours and 20 minutes for something called Terrifier 2. It's far too long. Now, did it seem awfully long? No, but I also watched it over 3 different settings. To go to the theater and sit there and watch it with some of the dialogue, I don't know. But these movies work. Why do they work? Partially, I think, is Art the Clown. I mean, another movie about a killer clown, that sounds ridiculous. I mean, it's been done so many times, but David Thornton Howard kills it as Art the Clown. It works. He's silent. His pantomime, it just works. And Damien Lewin, or however you say his name, the director, has a way of telling us a story. Damien Leone has a way of telling us a story that makes no sense that we somehow pay attention to. So if you've seen the first Terrifier, you know that he blew his own brains out, then came back to life at the end of it and something. And this one, there's a family, he's back. There is a good part. There's a little demon kind of clown girl that he sees. There's this brother and sister and their mom, and their dad's dead, and we don't really know what went on there. It's a little too much exposition, actually. And then for some odd reason, Art wants to kill the kid or take the kid and the daughter and the sister and the boy and the girl. But she's the one with the wings, if you've seen the previews, that tries to fight him back. There's a sword. It's a jumbled mess. It really is. It makes no sense. And they don't do a very good job of explaining any of it. But for some odd reason, the movie is compelling and you watch it. And I say Damien Leone has some talent and he's great with the effects. In fact, there is one horrifying scene. And if you've seen the movie, you know what I mean. When the girl's in the bed and he's still cutting pieces of her and half of her, and she says, "The mommy," it's like, that's good. That works. Some of it is just gross, though. It's just gross to be gross. But Art the Clown is fun. The way they kill each other, the crazy violence, I get it. It's somewhat fun for some people. But I think I'm just getting too old. I don't know. I just don't want the violence for violence sake. The whole time I'm sitting there thinking, oh, can you explain a little bit more of the supernatural thing that they brought into it? Of why this happens, of why Art's back, of what causes Art the Clown to do this. I kind of wanted a little bit of that. They kind of vaguely go over it, but they don't. So should you watch Terrifier 2? Well, quite frankly, you've probably already seen it. It's on Screambox, which you can get through Amazon. It's not awful. If you like the first one, the second one's more of it. And there's even a good clown song about the cereal. I enjoyed it. But I don't know that I could recommend it to most people. You have to be a specific person to watch Terrifier 2. Should you check it out? If you like the first one and you like a lot of gore, check out Terrifier 2. I just don't know that these movies are for me anymore. I just need a little bit more. This has been Joe Lewis of Bonehead Weekly.
And welcome back, everybody, to Scarefest TV. We're in our last 10 minutes of the show here. Katie, you remembered your question. You may now ask it.
Okay, so is there something generally that makes serial killers snap? Like I mean, they're crazy, but is there typically one event that makes them go criminal?
So there is always an event that happens for every single one of them. But with that being said, it's always different because it really depends on the influences that they had, what their specific trigger is. Like, for example, Eileen Wuornos, not interested in killing women, right? She killed men. So her triggering event was a man that was, trying to violate her. And that reminded her of her, past. And her, I believe it might have been her stepfather is what comes to mind. But anyway, whoever it was that originally raped her and, traumatized her, that all those years later became the trigger for her to then go on this killing spree of then referring that to all of these different men that were maybe not abusing her, right? She perceived it as abuse, but she was also a prostitute that was putting herself in these situations. And I don't believe that all of those men were physically aggressive towards her. I think she believed that they were. And I think that because of her past and all of her trauma, she truly believed that, and she killed them because of that. So that's just her specific trigger. other people's triggers are very different. Herbert Mullen, he just died a little bit ago, like a couple months ago, but he is the one that believed that God was telling him to kill certain people to stop earthquakes, right? So I don't know what happened in his childhood that got him to that place. Obviously, he was schizophrenic, but there was some trigger that happened at some point. Apparently, it was God's voice that he believed was telling him to do these things that caused him to then go and actually kill somebody. So for each and every one of them, the trigger is different. Jeffrey Dahmer, his trigger was abandonment, right? He had been abandoned all of his life. And then when these men that he wanted to stay with him and to never leave decided to leave, he would get aggressive and kill them. And then he would eat them to keep them with him. So every single one has a different trigger. So there are really three things that make up a serial killer. We talked about the nature and the nurture, right? So yeah, maybe you grow up with some kind of, mental disorder that may get you closer to killing other people. Maybe you're that off the rails. So that's your nature. But then there are things that happen in your life that will continually get you down that path. Different events that will happen that will get you closer and closer and closer. And then the final thing is that trigger. What is that trigger that pushes you over the edge and then starts this domino effect that will have you killing indiscriminately, and I think it's fascinating that most of the serial killers, we all think that they have no feelings, right? They just kill people and don't give a shit. And that's not really true. Often after they kill, there is a certain amount of depression that happens. Now, there's a couple reasons for that. One of them is maybe they're afraid they're going to get caught. So there's a depression that happens because of that. The biggest reason is because that high that they thought they were going to get from fulfilling that sexual fantasy is never, ever as good as they thought it was going to be. And so there is a release that happens, and there's a depression that follows that. And then, of course, they have to build up again to get to that place where they decide to kill another person. They hunt them down, and they do the cycle all over again.
Okay, I'm gonna. I want to.
You go, Wes.
Well, I want to follow up on a little bit there, the whole trigger thing. Do we know? Because I realized science was different back then. But okay, well, you brought up H.H. Holmes. Okay, the guy built a fucking hotel for the express purpose of killing people.
Hell yeah!
So what was his trigger? Oh, done with the hotel. Time to get started. I was wondering, looking back, did they ever figure out what took him down that
path? I don't know. I think history is a funny thing. We have a lot more resources to understand that now. But, being 200 years ago, right, and never being able to talk to somebody to figure out, what the hell happened to you? What was it? What did you go through in life that got you to this place where you hated women or hated people that much?
No, I kind of get that part, but go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, I work retail.
So, it's hard to say without being able to really dig into a person's personality and understand the events of their life. And it's not just the events of their lives, because we all go through shit, right? Shit happens to every one of us. But it doesn't mean that we, it all collects and then we kill people. A lot of it is perception. What is our lens that we're looking through? How do we perceive all of life around us? And that changes. You always see people that, they walk around and they got a fucking black cloud over their head, right? Everything is bad. Nothing ever good happens to them. Well, those people, whether they understand it or not, are often looking for the bad shit to happen to them, right? There's plenty of good shit that happens too, but they choose not to look at any of the good things that happen, like the fact that you're breathing and you can fucking walk around and you can get up out of a chair. They never look at those things, and they choose to see all the negative. Often these killers constantly look at the negative. They constantly look at the things that they feel are injustice around them. And eventually they bottle all that shit up and they explode. Same thing happens to spree killers.
I'm seeing a lot of people talk about female serial killers. Are there more that's like pop culture doesn't talk about? Like you mentioned one that I never heard of before, Eileen. What you said?
You've never heard?
Oh my God,
Eileen
you've not
Wuornos?
heard of Eileen Wuornos?
No.
They made a whole movie about it. They didn't just do a documentary. What's the chick that claims she doesn't get any good roles?
Charlene Theron.
Yeah, Charlene Theron.
Yeah, claims she doesn't get any.
Theron.
Yeah, doesn't get any good roles, and she's playing.
I just didn't see that movie. So.
Well, here, I'll take a shot at the answer. Meredith. The reason you don't hear about female serial killers is
we're better at it?
Women prefer to kill men slowly. Yeah. They marry us, and then it's just...
So
I don't like Charlize Theron, Jake. I didn't go out of my way to see it. I see it in the comments.
So you say that kind of in jest, but it's kind of true. Women typically kill a lot more slowly than men do. So women typically poison people, or their reasons for killing are very different than men. Typically, they're typically not killing for lust. Where men typically kill for a sexual gratification. Typically, women are killing because they want to get money. They want to get rid of their kids.
Spite.
Things like that. Yeah, spite is a big one. They don't particularly like. They work in a field, and mercy killings are a big thing for women specifically. So yeah, it's just different.
That makes sense, though. I mean, even if you think about like revenge in a non-murderous way, I feel like women are a little more like, we're not just going to fight you. We're going to ruin your life.
Exactly.
But, I mean, it makes sense. Yeah, I'm just reading the comments. Rosemary West. I don't know anything about it. I need to do more research on my women killers.
I got to tell you, you need to check out Rosemary and Fred West. So they were in England, right? And so husband and wife tortured, killed their own children, raped their own children. Rosemary West was they had kind of a sex dungeon. Well, I mean, not kind of, they did. And they would bring people in there. They would rape them and kill them. Awful, awful story. Yeah, there's a couple really good podcasts that talk about that story. But yeah, it is one of the more brutal. And the scary thing is that Rosemary herself, unlike a lot of the women that were joint killers with their husbands or boyfriends, she was an active participant. Like, she didn't give a shit about anybody. She probably killed as many people as her husband.
I actually think I have a book on female killers. I probably this has piqued my interest into reading that now.
I'll put it this way: watch a couple of the shows on Netflix, and then just go down the suggested list. And they Bad Roommate.
Let me just tell you, Netflix has those just to keep people watching.
Well,
Netflix.
Maybe
Nobody will watch.
I forget the woman's name, but the segment.
Dorothea Puente.
Yes. Oh my God, yep. Katie, now this woman, I guess it was really for financial gain. It was her thing.
Yep.
Words, it wasn't sexual. She basically built. She had a house, and she set it up to house indigent and mentally, I think most of them were mentally handicapped, weren't they? To some degree.
Yeah.
And and she would kill them for the government benefits. There.
Yep.
So.
You know, and it's crazy.
A real bitch.
She was sweet.
If you look at her pictures and stuff, she looks like she's like 70 years old. And she was only like in her 40s.
Oh.
Like everybody thinks that like she wasn't capable. Like, how did she dig all those holes to put them in the backyard? She was a pretty capable woman, but she played that up, right? She knew how to manipulate people, and she used the fact that everybody thought she was a homely old lady to her advantage.
When the police would come by, she would like offer them hard candy. I mean, it was your grandmother. She played the part. Educated.
There's nothing scarier than old people to me. So then, like, that would be terrible.
No, for sure.
Well, they've got the most reason to kill you because they've been here the longest. Okay, everybody, we're at we burned up the show. Give them another plug. Tell them how to get hold of your game killers.
Go to Linktree /KillersTCG. So that'll get you to all of our social media. That'll get you to the card game. And today, literally today, I just posted, we just released a trading card set called Serial Killer Kids, right? And it is it's kind of a takeoff of the old Garbage Pail Kids. So check that shit out. It's wild.
There you go. And ladies, check your freezers. Check your freezers. Everybody, this has been Scarefest TV. We will not have a show next week because it's Thanksgiving. And
everyone will be killing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Something.
Yeah, well, that or, you'll feel like it anyway. So yeah, Thanksgiving, we're going to keep skip. We're going to come back the following week with the latest episode of The Council. So we'll find out if Brandon's gotten anything done in the last month. Anyway, everybody, this has been Scarefest TV.